Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Behind the World. Today, I cannot even describe how excited I am to have Ken. Ken is a legend in Hollywood and the virtual production industry. He's worked on movies such as Avatar, The Matrix, Twilight, Life of Pi, Terminator, Fast and Furious. And all of these movies, I love them, and I have so many questions, and I think people will be very excited to hear about this. But before we dive in, Ken, I want to learn, like, how did you get where you are, and how do you describe yourself to the world?
Yeah, I like to say thank you for having me, Ahmed.
For sure.
And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I got into the industry just doing everything that I love, and I'd like to say I got in
Hmm.
through the back door
Okay.
because all through high school, I've painted, I've made music, I played sports. I've been in some productions like most people have in elementary, middle school, and high school plays, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then when I got into college, I got into UCLA. I thought I need to start focusing in on like something serious. So I actually got into kinesiology. So this
Okay.
is a sports training. I became a sports trainer
Oh.
while I was an undergrad. I did research, started to go from training more into like sports studies,
Okay.
learning how
Yeah.
the forces that happen on a pit, a pitcher's arm or in volleyball or basketball, the forces and muscle recruitment that happen in the legs and things like that. So it started slowly in sports and started to go into just research. So basic muscle research. By the time I got to then I went to graduate school. So, as you can see, starting to get more and more specialized. I got into medical research. So I started
Okay.
doing research into quadruped locomotion. And this will be relevant. I'll get to it.
Okay. Okay.
Got into medical research in spinal cord injury. So I became an expert on locomotions. I'm writing papers about it. All I'm doing is studying how cats and dogs, all quadrupeds go from walk to gallop to run, like all the different strategies that the
Yeah.
system goes through. And while
Yeah.
I was doing all of these things, I got an internship at an animation studio because they wanted to know they were like, this is interesting because I'm always
Oh.
interested in art. I never stopped painting. And then I started understanding, oh,
Wow.
animation is a thing too. If I know this much about how quadrupeds, walk and run and all these things, and I know them
Yeah.
frame by frame because I'm doing these analyses, I might be able to apply myself at a Duck Soup Studios, which is in West LA. I believe they're not here anymore. But anyways, they were a cell animated shop that was going into digital. So by the time I got into grad school, I had for the School of Medicine, and as an undergrad, I was hired by my job. I was paying my way through school. I worked
Yeah.
for the UCLA Brain Research Institute as an undergrad, and as a grad student, I was working at the neuroimaging lab, at the School of Medicine at UCLA. So I
Yeah.
was doing visualizations for grads, postdocs, and the like, and building a visualization studio. So now I'm building a studio inside the School of Medicine that's trying to show the science community it's basically medical visualization, showing the science community how to visualize how the receptors work, when a neurotransmitter comes across the neuronal cleft and things like that. So I'm doing all
Yeah.
of these things, building it. Still, there's computers involved, but it's still tape decks and all these things. And eventually, I'm bringing the School of Medicine up in terms of like I am now bringing because SGIs, it still wasn't desktop computing yet. It was
Yeah.
SGIs, and the School of Medicine had an SGI machine. So I was bringing in Power Animator, which is the predecessor to Maya, like all these early programs, and we were compositing and doing 3D animation like this. There wasn't great GUIs yet, and so when I graduated, I knew how to do basic animation. I'm doing it I'm
This is
crossing
so
the
interesting.
cleft from science
Yeah.
to art, and I'm doing it all at the same time. So I have a job for the School of Medicine while I'm interning at a cell animation company. And then finally, when I graduate, I'm like, I'm going to try another great experiment. My last experiment will be, can I get a job in the film and TV industry? Because that's been like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. I could always
Which
go
year
back.
was this roughly, so
This
that we can
was
set timeline?
94, 95.
94. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So now I'm getting in, I'm graduating, and I found a place that was, before I graduated, that was doing traditional matte paintings. And I had enough experience in my internships, and I was learning color theory and all these things because
Yeah.
I'm also taking extra classes in sculpting and color theory, all of this while doing medical research. So I'm just doing fun. I'm like following fun. 'Cause remember, medical research was still fun for me. Like I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved all the above. So I got when I got the job, it was a minimum wage job during a graveyard shift of babysitting computers because it's a brand new thing that they were doing. Like,
Wow.
computer came in and everybody was like, "Cool, what does it do?" I was like, "I'll figure it out. I'll try and help out with like what it can do." They had like a computer resident expert in there who, Richard Patterson. He won a SciTech award for creating one of the first digital green screen processes. Because remember, it was a photochemical process to begin with.
Okay.
It became a digital process after he was heavily involved with that. Illusion Arts is this place. At Illusion Arts was also Sid Dutton. He's a master matte painter. So back then, there was no such thing as a matte painting class. So you had a master and apprentice. He didn't accept me as an apprentice. I
Sorry,
got,
what's matte painting before? Like,
oh, okay.
yeah, because I'm not an expert
Yeah.
either. Okay, because I know it's one of your fields. Like, what
Yeah.
is it?
So matte painting is just the extension of the environment that you're shooting, whether it be
Okay.
a stage set
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
extending that out, or it could be on location. Then they do it different ways. You can have original negative where we put we put glass and you paint it in front. That's one way to do
Yeah.
it. Glass matte
Yeah.
paintings. So whatever set you have, you just extend it and put additional buildings or like your
I see.
background right now you have a
Yeah.
space background.
Yeah.
You could have a window where you're in a spaceport and then outside is the planet. So we're extending the set and it's not
I
just
see.
in place, it's also in time. A lot of matte paintings are period pieces, 1600 in this war or 18th century London or, or
Yeah.
turn of the century Paris. So a lot of this is periodizing or making, also there's safety issues. So, or access issues. Like there's very limited access of the White House. That's why a lot of matte paintings, early matte paintings are of the White
Ah,
House
that
or the
makes
Vatican
sense.
or dangerous areas like the cliffs in Ireland. Like you don't want to have kids around there or even adults. It's like even then it's like you have a safe set and then you paint the peril or the
That makes sense.
yeah,
That makes sense.
the
That
it
makes sense.
the safety parts that would be uninsurable with especially with kids and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's what matte painting is. It's just extending the
Okay.
set. So
Got it.
at this place, Illusion Arts, Sid Dutton was a master matte painter, and eventually coming in through the back door, doing all these things, he started to help, and the other painters there as well was starting to help me learn how to. I painted all the time, but they really taught me lighting, color theory, and how to integrate that with plate and how to use mood and how to get to photorealism. I mean, that's the biggest thing. This is with a paintbrush. This is also early days of Photoshop. So Photoshop,
Yes.
like when they just, my 5 favorite days of my life, I tell people this all the time. Getting married, 3 kids. The fifth one is Photoshop 3 layers. Because when layers came out, it changed my life. So now I could actually put layers and not, if you've had to paint
Yeah.
uh and have no layers, that's a whole different workflow than if you can have layers. And so this was monumental to me. I started using Photoshop as an animation tool as well. Like I'm painting
Right.
lightning, I'm painting things that are moving. This is also before After Effects was owned by Adobe. It was Cosa After Effects at the time. So little by little, now we're getting into the digital age. And Bill Taylor, the late Bill Taylor, he is ASC cinematographer, VFX legend. Him and Sid Dutton started Illusion Arts. He taught me the camera side. So
Okay.
now I'm on stage. I'm learning how to do motion control. So I'm programming motion control. I'm helping build miniatures. Lynn Ledgerwood, he was one of the guys who was building a lot of the miniature sets. Rob Stromberg, he's a visual effect. He's a director, production, 2-time Academy Award production designer. He was also a matte painter that was teaching me how to paint there. Like the studio was maybe at most 10 artists, not even that, but the highest concentration of talent that was at that time analog going to digital. So I
Yeah.
learned all these things going into digital, and now I'm digital matte painting, and now I'm compositing,
Yeah.
and that's and by the I didn't become a visual effects supervisor yet, but I learned every single department because I went from animation to begin with because of my science background and the animals animation to compositing, which I was like, this is where the magic happens. And then effects animation, clouds, smoke, water, fire, all that stuff. The very last thing was matte painting. And I was like, you can oil paint as a job for film and TVs and build these worlds that are insane. I'm like, how is this even a job? And because there's no school for it. So
Yeah.
I'm in there and I'm just like, I'm just, it was I would have paid so much to just be there, you know? So this whole thing about minimum wage, you know,
Doesn't
take
matter.
who
Doesn't
cares?
matter.
I'm exactly where I can't believe I'm at. And
Right.
I was doing extra jobs just to be able to pay off school,
Right.
pay the rent. You know, I'm just eating just like, you know, 2-for-1 pizza and trying to make that extend as long as possible. But the thing was, I was having the time of my life and I couldn't eat up how the art and the craft was done because it was magic. It was putting these miniatures, and some of it, you've heard of these things, forced perspective, where you compress
Yes.
the space so things get smaller faster, but then the painting in the back seems very far. But if you look at it from the side,
Yeah.
it's a very small space that when you get the camera perfectly right, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it looks like it goes forever. And this thing pops in your head, and it just through the camera lens, it's magic. So this is behind the curtain stuff that I was getting from Illusion
Right.
Arts that that stayed with me. And I've worked at now 15, 16 studios, has stayed with me through every studio, every art department,
Wow.
visual effects supervisor, you know, because I've worked at ILM Rhythm and you know, just name I've worked at so many places with so many great people. This foundation of perspective, striking my own perspective lines, the horizon, the lighting, just everything on how to integrate it the hard way. Then when the technology came in to make it faster and easier, and we'll get to this
Yeah.
too, because of the
Oh,
technology
yeah.
making
In the
everything
90s. Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
The foundation is really what you have to know. If you don't know what looks good, then you don't know when you're done, you know, and you
Right.
don't know where the North Star is and where you're striving to get to. So
Yeah.
that's everything really. And then with the tools, if you have the foundation, that's that's the trick, that's the magic, that's the essence of everything is knowing the rules, like what works, and then using the tools to get you there, not using the tools to try and shortcut anything.
Yeah.
Uh, because that is really intoxicating. And even myself, I'm not a music expert, but I was like, oh, this sounds great. And you know, I'll put a temp track in and give it to the music guy, and he's like, who did this crap? You know, I'm like, you know, I course, you know, so this is like I have my lane. I know what I'm really good at, but I also
Yeah.
know that these other things that I used to be dependent on before I
Yeah.
could move forward, I can now move forward. They're not all great, but my thing is like I don't know if it's great or not, but at least I can show it without the missing pieces. Because sometimes, you know, depending who you're showing it to, even though they're making creative decisions, they might not have the best creative background or knowledge or vision. So you have to actually spell it all out for them because they'll know it when they see it is often what I hear. Like, imagine this and like sometimes they can't. So
You just need to see it.
yeah, you just need to see
You
it.
know, your story is very much like inspiring in two ways. One is follow your passion no matter what. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
You know, and the second one is I think you are the perfect story of, you know, connecting the dots looking backward.
Yes.
Like going from medical research, connecting that to animation. Like there
Yeah.
was no way that when you were 21 or 22 doing medical research that you could
Yeah.
have thought that
No.
someday what you're doing in medical research will take you into animation. Like doesn't matter. It would have never been
Yeah.
possible. And yet, you know, later in your life, it connected the dots. And I think, you know, so many people struggle and they're like, oh, I want to do this. I can't explain why, but I don't see the path forward. Like connecting the dots looking backward. It's
Right.
the perfect story for that.
Right, and technology too, like
Yeah.
a lot of my success has come from me building what doesn't exist yet. So I
Yes.
had to build things to make my story come to life. I had to build things that didn't exist or put together things that experts or technologies that separately might get there, but together doesn't have a GUI, doesn't have an interface, and is not artist friendly yet. So, and that's the trick. Just because it's really good, if it's not artist friendly,
Yeah.
and the artist can't use it, then you have a problem. So
Yeah.
I've been able to bridge that as well. Okay.
So let's take an example of a movie you've worked on. Let's say Avatar, right? You've worked on Avatar, you've worked with James Cameron. How, like, how does it work? Like, I just want to understand, like, does the studio come to you and you say yes? And then what happens? Do you come in during the movie, at the end, at the beginning? How's the collaboration with someone like James Cameron? Like, how
Right.
does it work? Can you tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about that for
So
people
it's
who are
very yeah.
interested? Yeah.
It's very different for every movie and for
Okay.
like
Yeah.
yourself and how you come in. For this specific one, Avatar had, it had been in Hollywood working, and James had been working out for a while. But by the time we got in, they were doing photography already,
Yeah.
and we were the designers. Robert Stromberg and Rick Carter had already done a lot
Yeah.
of designs, and so their art department was here at Lightstorm. And then with the move, we this was the beginning of the whole virtual art sessions that were remote
Yeah.
recorded. You could
Yeah.
see Jim talking about all the things, the production designer, the visual effects supervisor, everyone's talking. In that point, we're getting designs and we're starting to build these worlds. There's also the
Okay.
collaboration between like Weta, ILM, like all the different VFX houses. So now you've got these worlds that have to go to different houses.
Right.
I was a visual effects designer, like art director at the time. So my responsibility was to make sure whatever concept designs came our way, whatever
Yeah.
the ships designs, all of these things, the way that the monitors looked, like that whole world that was envisioned already, that we could translate it into, okay, now it's in concept, now what does it look like in the movie? So we would send back,
Holy.
these are the photo reel, now we've got the actors
I
in the
see.
scene, and this is what it looks like, this is what it looks like when they arrive, at the base, this is what it looks like
Yeah.
when they're out in the jungle. And a lot of other companies are doing this as well. So there's a lot of matching that's also
Got
happening
it.
between designers, art directors,
Yeah.
and ultimately production designer and Jim. So now it comes to where now we're all working on it, and Jim is back. He's at Fox. It's right here, and we were LA based as well, and now we're going into reviews with him, and he's very particular. He knows a lot about a lot of departments. So
I
he
see.
will call you out if you're not
This is
doing
James
what
Cameron. You're talking about James Cameron. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He will call you out. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful because it'll cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Everybody's on their A game until somebody is doing something he doesn't like, and then you
Okay.
were like miles away. Luckily, when I went to go visit with him, there was a few interactions each time. I got the gentleman Jim. He was just so
Okay.
nice. He's like, this looks great. This one doesn't look great, but it's not your fault. I changed part of the script and I didn't tell you, and you did this, and it's
Interesting.
wrong. And you need to fix this. And this is the new story. And I'm bringing in my designs, and he can draw. So I brought in all my designs, and he's drawing over all these things saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong.
Oh,
This
wow.
is a Friday night. And I'm like, oh, great. He's like, okay, so if you can have this ready by Monday, because we have a Tuesday screening, it'd be great. And I'm like over the weekend, like I didn't even know I was coming in for this meeting on a Friday night. Like I can't call back art department and compositing department. And like I tried, but everyone's gone. So I'm doing,
Yeah.
I'm doing paintings overnight. I'm coming in very little sleep. Saturday, I'm getting the composites done. And now I'm starting calling compositors. By Sunday night, we're doing screenings. I'm touching it up. It's hard to like convey a lot of the messages to the art department. Because
Right.
remember, these are sequences. It's not just a shot. These are sequences. So
Right.
touching all the paintings, getting them in. By Monday, finally, all the shots are done. The drive is going out, and then the Tuesday screening comes in. And he was kind enough to send back a note. Thank you for turning this around so fast.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that's and he taught me a lot too. He's like, does this look good? I'm thinking continuity wise. I know where the sun is. Right.
Yeah.
So as we're moving around, I'm always plotting where the sun is. So I'm lighting based off where the sun is. And he's like, who cares where the sun is? Just make it look good. And he showed me like, can you tell that the sun is in the wrong place? And what looks better? And that's when I learned, well, yes, you're the director. You can say to disobey where the sun is and have
Yeah.
multiple sun directions. I can't. I can show you both, but I do agree with you. And, since then, now I always do what looks best. And then I do also, it's more work, but I do what's accurate. And then sometimes it lands in between because you can't have the perfect lighting, especially on a two-shot or something, reverses and things like that. But what's important in storytelling and the mood of the film and,
Yeah.
these things that I'm trying to be photoreal, I'm trying to be accurate, but that's not always the most important thing when you are putting together, a sequence,
Okay.
even a specific shot, even a frame within a shot. So when you start breaking it down down, it's like, well, what is the goal? And it's different for different directors. It's different for different VFX soups, production designers, cinematographers. So when you get this snowflake of a crew that gets together, then you're starting to learn. And that's part of like my job is getting in tune and aligning with the vision of everybody.
Yeah.
I'm partly hired because of my technical ability. I'm mostly hired for my taste. Meaning,
Interesting.
what decision would I make on this as an art director? Because I'm going to tell these decisions and direct them down to the team, and they're
Right.
all
Yeah.
going to move it in a certain direction, even shot for shot. I might break a rule or two, but I can do it knowing the director has given me the latitude, or I will never do it because I got blasted the last time I did. So it is really knowing, and it is, that's the fun of it is like,
Yeah.
it's never the same environment. That's another thing about my job. I'm always learning about different cultures, different physics. I'm going to
Yeah.
call it physics, meaning like in this time and day and age, it was a little bit more red because when you start to like put a movie through its color palettes, like especially Matrix, you've got the real world, you got the Matrix world, it's green and blue. So it's like there's different rules. When I say physics, I just mean the look of a certain
Right.
thing
Yeah.
that helps these visual cues, whether you know it or not, are subliminally like letting you know where you are in the story, or something all of a sudden has become more colorful and sharper and maybe stuck out. Like that means something in that part of the story.
Right.
That's what's
Yeah.
happening. And as a world builder, you need to change it, be aligned and know when to do it because the physics it is also there's a storyline to the physics as well. And I'm using that word loosely, but it's just the look
That
of
makes sense.
everything, even the movement of everything.
That makes sense. And do you spend time, like when you do all of this during this whole process, do you spend time on the set as well? Like during the shooting? Do you like get to spend time with the actors, for example? Do
Yeah.
you talk about the vision with, like, I know you've worked on movies where Johnny Depp was there, I think Angelina Jolie, and, a lot of like very famous people. Do you get to spend time with them and like talk to your vision? Or do you mainly like spend time with the directors and the
It depends
visual
on the show
department?
too. Yeah. So
It
like
depends. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like Matrix, I spent
Yeah.
zero. I have not even met Keanu yet. Or
Okay. I have a lot of questions about Matrix. So yeah. Okay. So you
but
haven't met Keanu. Okay.
But other movies, like, even on the off day, like I'm spending on time on set with them. And then on the off days,
Okay.
we're going out and then like we were shooting in Florida, with one of the main actors. I'm going to Cape Canaveral. We're going to like, the Rocket Garden. So it depends, you strike, and also with the teams, like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll gravitate more towards, because I've worked on many teams. I'll gravitate
Right.
towards the camera department or
Okay.
maybe towards the art department with set deck
Okay.
and all those guys,
Yeah.
because I've done that too. Sometimes with the actors, that's just one of those things where it's just a personality where you're hanging out in
Right.
between things. I'm setting up a shot with them, and then when I go off, they ask me questions. They want to see
Makes
something
sense.
because at a certain point, I have all the imagery that they're in it, I'm gonna call it olden times. Just a few years ago, it was all green screen, and like I'm the one that had like all like this is what you're acting to. And today is totally different. It's the same screen, but now you're here, and now it's just showing them, and also animation. Now you're going to be reacting to this. That's what this tennis ball represents. So
This is
I am
so
on set. I'm
interesting.
showing them these things, and so
Yeah.
depending, and sometimes it's the director, sometimes it's the editor. It's also what part of the filmmaking process are you in? So early
Right.
on, it's concept, it's coming up with the language, it's defining these things. Actors aren't in yet. It's early days, and
Right.
eventually you start getting to costume and props and all these things, and slowly they start coming in, and then special effects with the practical effects that are on set. So little by
That
little,
makes
you start
sense.
getting into it, and then on, once principal photography starts, now
Yeah.
it's game on, and sometimes you're there for a lot of it, sometimes you're only there for your back and forth with bits and pieces of it, and you're still working. I represent the facilities often. So I'm on set, I'm shooting these things, they're going back, and then I'll go back and make sure that I'm doing my role correctly. Because sometimes I'm the art director, sometimes I'm the visual effects supervisor, sometimes I'm the environment so like I've had different roles. So going back and forth and making sure that all the teams are moving forward
Mm,
properly. So those interactions with the cast and crew
yeah.
are I would say 99% just trying to get the job done because it's so difficult to
Yeah.
make a movie. It's still
Yeah.
amazing to me that a movie gets made. The other it is fun, the As soon as yeah, as soon as they hit the bell and it's time to everybody to wrap, you meet at the bar, then it's like work hard, play hard. There's a lot of that going on too. Some sets not so much, so it
Okay,
depends,
it's very different.
so yeah, a lot of it is, and sometimes I'm shooting local. Sometimes I'm going, halfway across the world, going to these places. So those are your people. I
Yeah,
those people help me through the next day and get me through the weeks. Especially when I'm away from family and friends. So it is this intense moment where they become your family, and then you don't see them sometimes for years, and then it's like that's why it's so wonderful when you're going to events, and you see them. It's
you
just
meet the
like, oh
people
my
again.
gosh, we were
Yeah.
so close for that time, and you try and keep it up, but I've worked on over 100 movies and television shows. It's like at some point, it's hard to. It's like, shoot, I know
Remember,
I worked with you before, like 30 years ago. I know I have, and then turns out I never had. It's just we were just in similar circles of friends.
yeah.
But
What's
it's
the craziest location you worked in? Like something memorable.
interesting. I love walking onto sets. There was the Flintstones where I walked in and it was like, I'm walking into a cartoon. This is the weirdest thing in the world. Or I was a visual effects supervisor, and these are stages
Yeah.
of a show called Vegas. And I walk in and there's this huge sound stage. They've got all the tables and all the machines going on. All the lights are blinking and it's dead silent because it's a movie set. And you see people talking and putting their hands up and because they're winning, but there's zero sound because the actors are acting right here, and it's just the
Mm,
weirdest. It's like, you feel like you're in bizarro world, so
yeah.
movie sets uh, can do that to you at times. And sometimes they're
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
big and magical that when you walk on, you're just like, wow, I love my job, and that's
yeah.
also a thing where oftentimes when you walk on, sometimes it's just all green. You're like, oh, okay,
It's very different.
yeah, and that's where it becomes more important that I show everybody, and
Yeah.
then I think we're going to eventually get into virtual production. That's when it all comes back again. Now
I
it's
see.
like, now it's like you don't have to pretend that you're on Mars. Here's Mars, and here's a set of Mars, and here's the action of going down the street. Like all the
Right.
that I'm telling them that they have to react to, that the cast needs to keep in mind during their take. Now it's like it's there,
Yeah.
and they get so much more. Just like when they see the set and they're in full costume, they can get more into their character. That's the
Yeah.
same thing. Green screen, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but when you have virtual production, it puts them right in there. And then you
So
can
what's the difference between visual effects and virtual production? Like I'm not is it one part of the other?
so virtual production is part of visual effects, but the big
Okay.
difference is that virtual production is production. So visual effects
Okay.
is usually a post thing. Virtual production is
Ah,
production. So you do the concept, you have to have everything ready. It's
I see.
pixel ready by the time you start photography. As opposed
Okay.
to visual effects, you can have a green screen. Sometimes I get plates of actors and sets, and they've shot all on green screen, and they're asking me, "Can you help design what this should be? Here's the script pages." I'm like, "You shot all this not knowing where your lighting direction is?
No way.
How did the DP figure this out?" And he's like, "Well, we just figured it's going to, we showed him the same pages. He figured he was going to do these things. And so now,
Yeah.
that like you can figure stuff out in post.
Yeah.
Virtual production, you got to figure stuff out in pre, so there's no
Yeah.
fix it in
Okay.
post, there's fix it in pre. You have to fix it before you get there. And
Okay.
that's virtual production. And it's all, I'm going to say it's all real. And I'm going to use the word real in this way, meaning like if you're in if you're in a restaurant and everything is glass table, glasses on the table, there's a highly reflective like utensils and everything, a glass wall of windows, and outside is the beach, and it's virtual production, and you want to hold sunset for
Yeah.
10 hours a day, 5 days of the week, because that restaurant scene actually takes a lot of pages in that
Yeah.
row. Like you can hold sunset that entire time. All the reflections, all the refractions through the glass, every little thing on the actor's face, on their eyes, in their eyes, all of this is real. This is what I want to say with real. When I used to do
Okay.
this in green screen, I used to, it came down to time. I would put it on the big surfaces like the table. I put the reflection of the
Yeah.
background because it's green. The green is reflecting off of everything. So I'm looking at the biggest parts of green and I'm trying to put image or color or some type of density of something going on, especially if something's moving in your
Yeah.
environment. I want to just have something moving. Doesn't have to be a perfect reflection, but I can never get 100% of that. I might be able to get 50% of that, but my goal is get as much as I can, or anything that's really, at some point I have to say stop and just say that's enough. Let's move on. In virtual production, it's all accurate. Like,
Okay,
all the
I see.
reflections, all
Yeah,
like even if the actress is wearing, one of the performers is wearing earrings or anything, they're gonna get the actual proper reflections that are coming not just from behind them, which is in picture, but behind the camera that's hitting them and going back into camera. Like, this type of volume the type of rendering that happens on set is real, and the motions
got it.
are all real. And that's that is something like when you start saying, well, I can tell that's a process shot. It's like that really is the talent of the artist, and also the time that they had to do every little thing that they know they think they should do, as opposed to virtual production. You get it all because you built it all, but
Makes
it's
sense.
front loaded. It's not
Got
back
it.
loaded. And that's the difference. Visual effects is usually a little bit more back loaded. You still have concepting. You're still doing that at the very beginning, but
Yeah,
the heavy rendering happens later, as opposed to the heavy rendering for virtual production or
production.
design, because sometimes the rendering is real time. So that's the thing with technology, that not all of it is baked. Some of it is dynamic, meaning you
Yeah,
can still move a light and have shadows move in your background. Some of it you do have to render out and have playback. But as technology progresses, so
yeah,
does the art form, and the sophistication of the audiences are now so much higher because we're getting better at what we do. So we're now approximating reality with all the CG that we're doing, because AI is
yeah.
a CG. So it's just,
That's okay. That's very, very interesting because I always wondered, and when you read online, it's never really clear. Like, but now
yeah,
hearing it from you, like someone
yeah.
who's been doing this for so long, it makes sense. Okay, so I have a very interesting question. So you've worked on a lot of movies that I love. I'm gonna list some of them, like Matrix, Revolutions, Life of Pi. I just can't describe the ending of Life of Pi. Completely destroyed me. Like I was so Life of Pi, Matrix, Revolutions, Twilight. I watched it when I was younger, but
Uh,
I know a lot of people are gonna be very interested in
yeah,
this. Twilight, Fast and Furious, Terminator 3.
yeah.
And there's probably a lot more, like The Tourist. You worked on Homeland, one episode of Homeland, one of my favorite shows. But let's block it to the first five. So we said Twilight, Fast and Furious, Terminator, Life of Pi, and Matrix. Which one was the most memorable and why?
Can I bring one in that you didn't say?
Yes.
Muppets from Space. That's my
Oh, I missed that.
favorite
Okay.
show I've ever worked, favorite shot, and that was early in my career. That was at Illusion Arts, only because, and can I describe why?
Yeah.
So this was when it was transitioning from practical to digital. So
Yeah.
the matte painting was a digital matte painting, but this shot is Gonzo. It's a dream of his. It's Gonzo's going to Noah and Noah's Ark. So Noah has his ark, and the animals are coming two by two. So I start off the scene by building the storm, the
Okay.
storm that creates the flood that floods the entire earth. So
Yeah.
I use cotton. This is with me with Lynn Ledger, but it's cotton and chicken wire. So now I'm putting cotton in the chicken wire, and I am putting light bulbs on. So now I'm getting the heat lightning inside of the cotton balls. And I'm taking all of this, and I take a whole day of photography, and we're getting this in, get it in the computer. And like I said, Photoshop frame by frame, animating the clouds, and then now the lightning coming out. So it could be 8 layers of turning it off and on just to get
Right.
the glow, the main part of the bolt. So now I'm animating all this stuff. So that's chicken wire, cotton, and Photoshop painting. And then I start painting out the sky, and then it comes down, and then we have a physical miniature that Gonzo comes in. Dave Goles is a puppeteer, so I
Yeah.
can see him underneath. He's in the green screen, and I could see him puppeteering Gonzo walking in. Gonzo's looking around, and you can see Noah's Ark in the back with the animals coming in two by two, and he walks up. So the whole sequence is he walks up to the door and knocks on the door, and the door opens because Noah's done loading in the
Yeah.
animals. He opens up the door, and Noah's like, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly, but "Oh, what are you?" And Gonzo's like, I don't know. And then, Noah's like, and where's your mate? He's like, I don't know. And then, so Noah's like, closes the door and, you see, and then reverse on Gonzo, he's all sad, but then the door opens, he gets all excited. Noah hands him an umbrella. He opens up
Yeah.
the umbrella and then, high shot of coming up and it's like the rain just starts coming down. So it put everything together for me. So I did the Ellen's photography. I did the lightning animation. I did the camera move that came down. I pulled Gonzo off, which is I just loved working with that footage. And then all of this put together, putting the lightning on Gonzo, all of this too. And then while I'm working on this and I'm doing the composite and I'm also going to do the film out, I hear somebody outside of the place, and I hear his voice. And I'm like, oh my God, Gonzo's here. Open it up and I could see the silhouette because I've been staring at him for weeks. I can see the silhouette. So I met Gonzo, David Goals. So and last month, and that's been my favorite shot ever.
Interesting.
All the ones that you mentioned, Avatar, all these things. These are great shots, but I think I just had the most fun on this.
Right.
And it really, everything came together and everything I did was for a reason. And that's not to say that doesn't happen on all the shots. This one, it really helped me because I wasn't a VFX supervisor yet, but everything I was doing was like just thinking about every element, how to shoot it, how to put it together. And finally I was like, okay. And I also had the mentorship of the, Bill Taylor, Sid Dutton, and all the other artists. It's like, this was just like the culmination of like, okay,
I see.
I'm doing this, I'm getting this out, and I got it out, and and I got to meet Gonzo. So, that was one of the things.
Right. Yeah.
And not to take away from any other ones, like Terminator was great because it is so iconic and we get to do I'm working with pyrotechnics and explosions and putting that together. Avatar, the design was just amazing in that world of building. Fast and the Furious was, that's when, before the word previs was out, I was prevising races and putting cars in.
Oh my God.
The cars and going out and shooting them with the director and then putting these shots back together. And then when there were issues where we didn't have certain things and new shots were coming up, we need this finish line shot or something, I would whole cloth, like this is back in a time where you could do from beginning to end. Like I would scan in the whatever the photography was from location that I was helping film at, and then I would do the background map painting. I would actually paint the cars and fly them through and do that animation and do the camera shake and all these things. And then I would do the color timing, make sure it fits into the sequence, and then I film it out. This was a shot where not one other artist touched. So I love that shot because back then, there were times where people would do entire shots. They still do now.
Which Fast and Furious was this? Which year was it?
The first Fast and Furious, I can't remember what year, but it's Fast and Furious.
Oh, okay, so the first one. Okay, yeah.
It was originally called Red Line. Fast and the Furious sounded weird to me because it sounded like a soap opera. The Bold and the Beautiful and the Fast and the Furious. But anyways, I was like, and it tells you how much I know about marketing. Fast and Furious, like the perfect name, right?
Of course,
But anyways, so each kind of film and show has even like X-Men or Life of Pi.
X-Men,
just Life of Pi was just amazing because you got to remember that year
I'm such a fan.
the cinematographer won best cinematography
for Life of Pi.
The entire movie was green screen and blue screen.
Wait,
we put in so much of the backgrounds that's what won cinematography was our work. Like, not to take away from the cinematographer, but I would like to say we had a heavy hand in that believability of that world.
Wait. So you're saying, was the water real in Life of Pi in the boat? So the boat was on real water.
The boat was in a water tank, but we did so much CG water on top of that water tank work too. And so the cinematography was excellent. The world that we built was excellent. Putting the two together was some of the best work I've seen my colleagues do. I was involved with it, but I saw some stuff that my brain was just exploding. The tiger, like that animation was just all the animals. I got to work on a lot of that stuff.
Oh my God.
It was amazing.
So for animals, for example, in the scene of the Life of Pi, like they're all CG. So the actor on the set, he's on a boat in a water tank by himself.
Yeah.
And he has to imagine that there is a lion or a tiger doing that. So all of that was like
there's a green sand puppet or just something with some weight. So there's
Okay.
moving things that
I
are
see.
the characters, the animal characters.
Okay.
So the actor
I
is
see.
acting to like a puppet, for lack
I
of a
see.
better word, a puppet,
I see.
a
Okay. So
green
it's a
puppet.
puppet.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then you replace that with a tiger and with all of the real animals in CG,
Yeah.
basically.
And remember,
Interesting.
we're also that's the one thing about animators. They're one of the best studiers of life. Like they
Yeah.
stud when like the tiger team or the
Yeah.
orangutan team, whatever the team, like they study them so much. That's where my background in local like
Interesting. Oh
animal
yeah,
study
animation.
comes back so much. It's like that's the level of study you have to have, not just the frame by frame, but
Yeah.
the behavior of an animal and the
Yeah.
behavior of that
Yeah.
animal starving. He hasn't, it's like getting in, like you're as an animator, you're an actor and you're studying that
Yep.
animal, like you're doing the hybridization between anthropomorphizing and the real animals, and that's like Life of Pi was one of the, it won visual effects that year for at the Academy, and for every right reason. It was just amazing.
Yeah. You
Every
must have been proud of yourself and the
ah,
team, I
well,
guess.
the team was
The team, yeah.
the water was ridiculous.
Oh,
The ocean, the every sunset, the attention that we paid to for every sunset was just and then the animation, you just can't get around like how
yeah.
that was done. This is Rhythm and Hues. Remember, they're the ones who did the polar bears. They've been doing it the longest. They're
Yeah.
known for their animation, and so like that was some of the best work I've
How
seen.
much time does that take, like, to get the animation
It
right? Like, what are
takes
we? Are we
so much
talking days? Are we talking weeks, months? Like,
months,
what are we talking?
months, yeah. Some of the research by the time it hit screen was like over a year. I mean,
I
the first test that I saw, and this was what killed me. The first test that I saw knocked me off my socks how well the test one was. I was like, what are like this is we already knew how special this was going to be from the
yeah.
very first test, how
I see.
how well it looks. And I know we're going to get into AI later, but I will say this, that study of animal and motion and all of these things, that's what AI models are trained on. So
Mm,
now we're getting into this is what it studies real animals as like depending on how it's trained, but usually
yeah.
it's getting these types of footage. It gets
Yeah.
more human footage than specific animal footage.
Yeah.
But that's where the strength of the model lies, is how much
Yeah.
or how little has it been trained on these things. And that's
Exactly.
the same thing with the artists. How much or how little have they been trained on it? And then there's a skill to it as well. Just
Yeah.
like an actor, if you take 100 actors, all 100 of them can put in however many years of acting, but there's going to be levels to their performance, to how well they do. That's the same thing with every job, not just in our industry, but in every job. And so that's when you start getting into generalizing craft. That's a dangerous area to get, because there's a lot of variation, and there's a lot of like, well, who's your audience? Is it a TikTok audience, or is it an hour and a half, or is it a half hour
Mm,
across 10 episodes? It's like there's a lot of different things, nuance that goes into, well, who are you trying to build this for? Who's your audience?
right.
To what
Right.
level, because you don't.
So movies, like, before starting to shoot a movie, do they think about who they're shooting it for? Is that like a question? Like, is this something that they ask themselves?
That's the pitch. So because the studios will get pitches, and
Yeah.
the pitches will tell the story and who their target is.
I
The studio,
see.
that might be a back and forth. Well, we think if we do this, or so now, because it's show business, it's not show. Well, I believe that art is the center of everything, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you have to make money. So
Yeah.
it's what's most marketable, and while trying to keep the creative integrity of the vision, right?
Yeah.
So there are some things where you can just tweak it a little bit, and all of a sudden you've just
Yeah.
opened up a quadrant, to this quadrant, or to this demographic, or to the, like now you can start getting, your return on investment, but
Right.
without compromising. And so that's also the push and pull that is necessary in what we do at every point. Even as a visual effects supervisor or art director, I need a producer to keep me in my box, meaning I can make the company just go broke if I just started throwing out all these ideas and like, let's just hire this and do it this way. I'm like, that is not a feasible way.
Yeah.
And we need
Yeah.
to, this is your budget, work within this box. And
I
that's
see.
part of the skill as well is how can I'm always more impressed when somebody does an amazing effect that did not cost a ton of money and is a and has come up with a technique that was like that's amazing as opposed to let's just throw a couple $1 million at it and that'll
Throw
work.
money at the
Yeah,
problem.
which is a technique as well, but
Yeah.
that's the people who can do it that are more genius about the workflow and the
Yeah.
design, the effect. It's not just the creative design of the pretty pixels, it's the design of how to put the elements work together to create what it is you're trying to get in that shot.
Yeah.
And that really is that pull beauty. That's why I'm saying like it's amazing to me how movies get
Right.
made because there's so many points of failure.
So
There's a
much.
million points of failure, and there's so much push and pull that is required, and you don't always win at all the goals that you're trying to achieve
Right.
in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, before we get into AI, because I would love to talk to you about it, because since I've been in AI for like, for some time, and like I actually wanna you seem to have an interesting perspective that is different from people that are rejecting it. So I want to get into that. One movie that we didn't talk about, and I don't know how much it seems like you were involved, is like Twilight. You were involved in Twilight.
Yes,
Was it the second one,
the
right?
second one, I think. Yeah,
Can you share a bit more about that? Because a lot of people are like, they love Twilight, and like,
right.
were you on set? Were you not? Like, did you meet Robert Pattinson?
Ah,
And like, what was your work like there? Like, and you shared something in the document that was interesting about like shooting in a different high school in different locations. So
yeah. If and hopefully we can edit this. It's at Forks. I forget where the original and the fans are going to kill me on this, but yeah. So movie one was made, certain
yeah,
price, certain crew, certain locations, and then
yeah,
now we're doing movie number two. We still need
yeah.
to maintain a certain amount of the effects, but now we're traveling to these different locations, so I have to design for those, and then but we're returning to the high school, and we need to recreate it, and we're not going to where they originally shot it for reasons I can't remember, but it
Sure.
usually
Yeah.
is financial. That's usually what
Okay.
it is
Okay.
for
Okay.
talent
Yeah.
availability. They can't get, for there are like again, there are so many points that influence where you're going to shoot. There's also tax credits, that is a big I'm thinking that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
Is so we had to recreate that high school in a different location. So
Okay.
we went and we captured that high school, meaning photogrammetry and all of that. We rebuilt it and to make sure like whatever they shoot looks just like the previous play location. And so it
Okay.
just has to be seamless. So it's these seamless effects also that I love. And it's like people go like what sequence? That sequence had visual effects? I don't remember because they're usually thinking some type of vampire thing is happening, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's like this place is playing for that place. Oftentimes Atlanta is a stand-in for a different city or
Okay.
Vancouver. We've made Atlanta, we've made Vancouver so many different cities around the world because that's where a lot of filming is done or these hubs of where photography happens
For
is
sure.
London is often like we have to make it play for somewhere else and and,
That makes
and these
sense.
are the invisible effects and they you have to get it right and you can't have anybody questioning
For sure.
their work being done, because there's that weird, like, then they're out of the story. You just got to keep them in the story. And that's the other thing. It's just continuity, making sure, because sometimes you do shoot in a place and then they've struck and they left it. Now they're like, oh, we need these additional shots. So now we have captured a lot of it so we can recreate to create shots that can go back into the cut
That makes sense.
against the shots that were actually shot there. We're shooting it on stage or somewhere else, and now those have to replicate into that. So there a lot of that, even non-visual effects shows have a lot of visual effects in them for these reasons. These are what they call the invisible effects. It's just
Okay.
the
Yeah.
press to make the movie work. Even visual effects movies have a lot of non-visual effects shots that look like there's no visual effects at all, but there's a ton of them. There could be hundreds of those. Usually are
Yeah.
hundreds of those.
And how is it decided where a movie is shot? Like, I know they go scout locations, but like in practice, is it that there's a team that flies to different locations? And then what are the criteria? Like, I guess it's not just, oh, I kind of like it. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you decide? Is the weather taken into account? Is it
Yeah.
like, is the country and then visa, for example, do you need a visa? Like what are the things
All the
small things
above.
that,
You know, everything is a factor. The
yeah,
weather, the time of year, the time of day, the is it a period movie? Does this play
yeah,
for that place? The crew, do they have a good crew? Do we have to fly in crew?
I
Um,
see.
Is it a, one of the biggest one is it a tax friendly location?
Right.
Rebates.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And then, the location scout, does bring back all these options, and the options are weighed. How long are we going to be there when we need to move company there? How many, what is the transportation and hoteling like for is it easier here versus there? Not just even for shooting, but just for the company movement, moving them
For
around.
sure. Yeah.
So there's so many variables. And then talent, like I was saying earlier, is like talent availability. Sometimes like, oh, this one fits better in their schedule. In this location, if we need to do if there's a lot of set construction that has to happen, or there's just a lot of natural things that can play
Yeah.
for these interior locations or exterior locations, they already got a head start. You don't have to completely recreate it from whole cloth. So there's so many variables that go into
I
that
see.
question.
That makes sense. I guess the last thing I want to chat about is just AI. I mentioned, I think you've brought it up a couple of times. You have a very interesting take on AI. Seems like you see the value of it. Like, like, how is it impacting your work? Like, for example, like you talked about animation, AI like automating animation, etc. But as someone who's actually seems to be really a believer in it, like helping the creatives, like on a day-to-day basis, like how is it? How are you using it? And like, in which part of your workflow are you using AI the most?
So AI is right now we're using it in a very utilitarian way, meaning
Okay.
like in terms of performance, no matter how much the same line, how much I prompt the line to be happy or prompt the line to be sad or prompt the line to be intense, it's like I will never get the performance out of me or the acting than I would a real actor. A real
Okay.
actor is gonna working with a real director, the director's got story and that character in mind, and the character is living in that character, and they're both
Yeah.
bouncing ideas. And then you're saying, well, I'm getting some emotion out of this AI. And I'm like, okay, but that's a different level. Like to me, I haven't seen usable performance out of AI yet, but I see very usable set construction, not design. And I still need set construction to be done for certain pieces that they're touching and everything. So there are a lot of things that it's good for. Like I'm a designer and I
Right.
design things and then have to turn around and fabricate them. Right. So in the design, it's fast. Fabricating is for a lot of things that have to be interacted with on set. Even if AI can change my costume and my
Yeah.
hair and my makeup right now, like it can take my beard off and
Yeah.
make me slimmer or whatever, which would be great. It still needs to be designed. Like the designers are still the ones with the eye and the
For
thought
sure.
process, and they're so professional in their job in their lane that it's like it's like James Cameron does for costume designers. Even though there's never for the Navi, there's not a physical costume in the show.
Yeah.
He has them all built physically because there's a certain tactile that informs the digital costume, that informs digital hair and makeup. And
Yeah.
all of this, you can feel it and you appreciate what's the difference between like how he's making his movies in a very like quick. So look how much, I did the same shot that James Cameron did, and I did it for, 1/100th of the price. Well, try and make an Avatar whole movie like that, you'll immediately say I would say it's 1 millionth as good. So I don't want to get into that side of it, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
usefulness for creatives. It doesn't replace the creative. A lot of people are saying it does. Like for me, I can say when I'm trying to do a pitch myself, because I do a lot of
Right.
pitches, I'll put in temp music, I'll put in temp costumes, and they look pretty cool to
Yeah.
me. To me, and I'm a designer. I'm a designer. Now, when you
Yeah.
get to that level where like you get the music guy and you get the costume design, like these people or the animators,
Yeah.
and it's just like to all of these crafts, all of these parts that you're saying is a craft in the making of a film.
Yeah.
AI will help every single one of them, and I'm trying to help evangelize that because this same
Okay.
thing that I'm doing now is the same thing that I was doing in the '90s, early '90s with this computer graphics thing. Make a computer graphics model and try and put put in a digital texture on it, it looks horrible. And they were right. It did look
Yeah.
horrible, but it got better and
Yeah.
it better. And the thing is, you can't, it's here. You can't raise your hand and yell at traffic and it'll just go away. It's like, it's here and it's going to get better. And to a lot of the, I'll say this one thing, I don't know how good this analogy is, but at the time, there are very few like model builders that were really good at their jobs at that time where there was no CG model building. It was all physical model building. Those that went into CG, even though it was terrible looking, just expanded. It went from like, I'm just going to give a number. There was 200 people that were really good at it.
Yeah.
It quickly became, when it became CG, 2,000 to 20,000 model builders all of a sudden. There's new jobs. The ones who were leading them all were the people who knew how to make models. Those original
Right.
model builders were now CG soups for model building or more, or visual effects. They went on because they were experts in their craft. I'm going to say that's the same thing for AI. If you know your craft, animation, there's a lot of animation programs out there that will help you do AI and replace certain aspects inside the animation line, but nobody knows acting, squish, squash, how things move from frame to frame. At what point should they be hitting this pose? When to go off model and stay on model? The animator has the history and knows more about that than anybody. So to resist that as an animator, I think is problematic. You should be embracing it because nobody, like, if you don't do it, somebody who doesn't know animation is going to be pushing those buttons and trying to drive that animation. That's the wrong person. The right
Yeah.
person is the person who's an animation expert. That goes for lighting, that goes for
Yeah.
prop building, that goes for costume design. The
Yeah.
wrong person shouldn't be doing all of that stuff, even though they get a pretty picture immediately. Pretty
Yeah.
picture doesn't mean usefulness in a film. Pretty picture just means it's pretty, but you need it to make sense in your story. You need it to make sense within, this is one picture. How does it work throughout the shot? And then how does the shot work throughout the scene? And how does the scene work throughout the whole arc of the movie? All of these things account to art directability, continuity, and usability. And that's the thing. To make a film, you have to have the
Yeah.
people who know how to make the right decisions to get down the road to be able to put these pieces together that actually make people want to pay to buy popcorn and buy a movie ticket. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, it's like I will watch a lot of these things that I'm seeing in AI on YouTube. They look great, but I wouldn't pay for it. And it also doesn't hold my interest. At some point, the craftsman and everyone's going to start getting what AI does is it gives you a shortcut. You're not beholden to the barrier of making product. So people are going to start getting better at craft
Yeah.
faster. And the
Yeah.
people who are already good at that craft, that's the power up button for them. They can
Yeah.
like 2x themselves or 3x themselves. Right now, there was a time when I was working on Matrix, I think it was Passion of the Christ. Like I was working on 2 movies and I was like, I'm at the limit. The 3rd movie came up. I'm like, oh, I want to work on that
Oh,
movie. 4th and 5th came up and I had to say no. In today's day and age, I could probably take them all, but it's still
interesting.
me that's making all that product.
Right.
The thing is, I can be
Right.
that much faster. And I would say it's not that it would have been any less if I took those extra jobs because it's still me.
Me. Still
It's
you.
my
Yeah.
craft and what I came out with and could potentially be even better because I can get to faster iterations.
Interesting. Very
So
interesting.
so and
Yeah.
that's and that, I would say this because I love watching actors talk about this. But what I've heard some actors say, and I agree with this, is like if you license yourself, your image, name, and likeness, and now you have the agency to like put yourself in 5 different movies at the same time
Yeah.
and ultimately drive each one because it's still you. And then where you see it not working, you can still be a part of that and say no when it's not working and say yes when it is working. And that's 5xing yourself, like
Yeah.
now, and that's before I would say 2 movies and I'm at the limit depending on how
Now
much
you can
work
do
there
more.
is. But then, I think at that time I was already at my limit and then Matrix walked in. I'm like, well, I got to take that. I have
You
to.
can't say no to Matrix.
And then something else walks in. I'm like, no. And then they show me the shot and I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. I have to build. I'll see the concept and I need to bring that to life. And it's a big hero shot that's doing this thing. I'm like, and now I'm killing myself to do it. And now I'm wishing like, oh man, if I had AI back then, it's not replacing me.
Yeah.
it's making me times 5. It's like, it's so cool. Even if it's just one show, I'm getting 5 times the product out, and it's still my craft that's driving this. That out of the
That's
1,000
very interesting.
pictures, I'm telling it, oh, I want to go down this road or down that road. And if director, now I can go with many more options to the director. And like I said at the very beginning, I'm hired for my decision making. Right.
For
So
your
it's
taste.
not
Yeah.
just the technical aspect of being able to build all these options. I'm eliminating options because
Yeah.
this is what I think it should be. If the director agrees or gives me additional direction, then I can
Yeah.
start moving in that direction. And that's powerful. That's a
That-
collaboration tool that's powerful amongst craftsmen.
That's very, very interesting. You talk about like speed of iteration. One time I got to meet the CTO of Pixar, Steve May, and we were in a dinner and we were chatting. And he was telling me about like, he's like, I don't understand why all of these companies come and pitch me. As you can imagine, a lot of AI companies pitch Pixar because it's a dream customer. Pitch them, oh, I can automate animation. You don't need animation. He's like, I have the best animators in the world. I don't want that. But here's an interesting insight,
Yeah.
and which goes back to what you were saying. He's like, if someone comes pitches me a solution where it works with the animator, where let's say an animator works on frame 1 and frame 2 and frame 3, and then they need to interpolate between those frames, creating like the animation between those frames, and he just automates that part, but it leaves the big decision to the actual animator. He's like, I'll buy this tomorrow. But
Right.
like, so many people are trying to come and pitch, especially to people like you. Like, I've seen it in my network, like
Yeah.
going to the movie industry is like, you don't need actors anymore. I can create a movie with just AI. Nobody's gonna ever take this, and at least for now, right? But like,
Some people will. Some people have.
so
And I,
we don't know no
uh,
names. But I thought it was interesting because you talk about that. You talk about like the speeding up instead of replacing, and
can I
yet
just add to
most
that too?
yeah
Because we just finished a short with an ex Pixar animation director,
okay
and it's not just because we can put in the keyframes, the in between frames. It's like if you can get a tool that can, because there's nuance to I'm local 839, and I started off as an in betweener. There's an art to it, just like in
yeah
rotoscoping. There's an art to it. If you can put controls over these things that are automated but still have some art directability about them, like how the velocity is moving into this keyframe, like that's a thing. Knowing like how you squish and how just velocity, is it a slow ramp in, is it a
yeah
fat hard, like it's like music.
yeah
Animation is like music. You have to know the notes, not just the notes, but you have to know the attack, the velocity of in and outs. And that automating in betweening is a natural, like low hanging fruit. I will say a lot of the pieces that are there that are still craft, if you can put, I'm going to call it art directability, but it's basically control of the precision of it, the timing of it. Comedy is all about timing too, right? And we're getting into comedy, and to me, it's like, man, if I could just get. Yeah, so like that's why you watch like the outtakes of comedy shows. It's
yeah
hilarious because it's all about timing, and they're experimenting in real time. Imagine the brain of like Eddie Murphy, Gene Wilder. There's these people who are so good at it, and at
yeah
putting that into an AI model. It's just like that. There's something like you're not going to get them. Like
for sure
and I've eaten my words many times on this too. It's like eventually, not now, but eventually, will we? I'm like, I don't know. I don't
yeah
have that type of crystal ball, but I'll tell you right now, we are so far from it that why spend a gajillion dollars trying to build something that's there is the talent is right there. What are you trying to do? And you're still not getting there. It's like
yeah
eventually, I don't know what eventually what it'll be, but I will say this: art directability, continuity control, like all these
Mm,
things on top of what they're trying to build. I think if you don't know, just like in art, if you don't know what looks good, you're never gonna know when to
right
or in what direction to go. In tool building, if you don't know what you're trying to do, like the goal of the animator, the goal of the prop art, the costume designer, the hair maker, like if you don't know what their goals are, then how are you going to build it? When are you going to know that you've built the right tool? It's one of those things. And also there are times that break the mold, nonlinear editing, these type of things, the motion control, these types of things are revolutionary in our industry.
yeah
I think we're going to have a few of those points as well. Some things might get a little bit more automated with a little bit of control on top. That person, like computers, that used to be a human job, a computer. Now it's, now it's a computer. So it's like I think that might happen in our industry. But those are the
Yeah,
things we're going to invent a new thing for humans to do as well.
for sure.
And I think that's the art of filmmaking is such an art, and it's not just one filmmaker isn't good at all filmmaking. There's very specialized, and that's wonderful. And the media, it used to be a rectangle.
Yeah,
Now we're getting like all these new surfaces. We're getting 16K dome. We're getting all these things. It's so exciting how we can reimagine how to see these things. And I think that's why there's a call back to film and a call back to VistaVision and anamorphic lenses. DP's always like all these old technologies. They were initially not used as much, but there's a there is value in what they provide, and it's artistic, and it feels good, and if utilized in the right way, just like stereo 3D for certain films, some of them got gimmicky, but if used in the
yeah,
right way, oh my gosh, it's just great. You're there, you're in it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so glad I went out to the movie theater, not only saw it big, but saw it in 3D, because this is an experience that is hitting different senses, that's hitting different, like the experience itself. And that's what I think media is getting to, is more experiences, just how well audio smells, because I did live
yeah.
entertainment.
Immersive.
Yeah, so it's
Sorry,
just
so you did what? Sorry, you mentioned?
live-based entertainment. So, like, I did
Okay,
rides, like Jurassic
okay.
World Tour. These are shows or fly rides where you're in a dome, you're flying over things. And so I had to direct not just the actors that are on screen, the environments that we're flying through, but the
Oh,
smells that you
wow.
get at different parts. And we had, well, butt thumpers, like certain parts, these are base things that are installed in the facility just to try and get you a visceral, the more senses you hit during an experience, the more fulfilling that experience is. So as a creator, because I would add writing partners, but I was also help design and then come up with the talking to the ride manufacturers how to do these things. That's our future. Like, we're seeing it now. The theater is I will cry so much if it goes away, because it can't. It is such one of the best ways to consume media. But I am excited about all the other ways. I the vertical aspect of it. I'm not fully into it, but I recognize that's a thing. That's a tasting. I'm hired for my taste, but I also will watch media based on my taste. I
For
force
sure.
myself to watch certain things because it's the media du jour. But and it might help me get a different job, but at this point, like, there's
Yeah,
enough work going around. The need for media is high. It's just a matter of like what's getting greenlit. There's pressure on budgets, and then there's competition for eyeballs, because the distribution of content is starting to get spread out. So these are not my areas. I create the stuff. I don't market the stuff. And the technology for the audiences is a whole other place. How do you
yeah,
drive audiences, projectors and headset, all these things. I love them all. I love experiencing the ones and I love testing them all. I don't love them all. I like that there's a lot of different areas, and that I get to like gravitate towards, my success, as you've been saying. I just follow my nose in terms of what's fun. And that's
right.
usually, there's other people that also enjoy that. Like stereography was a big thing. Like, I got heavy into stereography. I love the whole,
VR, you love VR?
yeah, VR, but I mean, I got into stereoscope,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
19
yeah.
fair, like all of that stuff, and I started building my own ViewMaster reels, like all of I got into stereo photography. I got a silver screen and would look at just my photography in stereo 3D. It's an art form. If you look at it in an art way, like Mewbridge, the guy who did the horses, those,
Yeah,
whether the horses ever had all four legs. Again, quadruped locomotion studies, whether he also did stereoscopes slides. And at the time, before TV, they used to be comedy episodics. You would buy packs of them and you would watch these shows in stereoscope. And it's an art form. It's just so wonderful. And these art
yeah.
forms, like that one's not coming back now, but we do have stereo movies. But I'm like, all of these art forms are crafts, and it's just like I still have a record player. I think I will always have a record player, and it's vinyl is always gonna. I just love it, but I haven't listened to a CD in a while, but it's all been streaming. And I love CD, and DVDs. I haven't watched a DVD in forever. It's like, so you kind of lose it, and then it comes back. Like vinyl came back, and that was weird.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't get rid of my vinyl collection because I've always loved it, and now yeah. So, anyways, just because the AI, there's this thing like it's everyone. There's always this. The sky is falling. It's going to replace the
No,
job and
it's not
it
true.
that's the printing press. Like every time the television to radio, when television came out, oh my gosh, radio is going to disappear. Or even when television came out, theaters were going to disappear. It's like I think you hear the sky is falling all the time, and it's just we've been here before. I will say there's something significant to AI that is a little bit different than the other technologies, only because of
Access
uh,
to everyone.
I don't. It's to me, it's not the public access. It's the technology itself. I'm talking about
Mm,
Skynet. I'm talking about Terminator. I'm talking about these apocalyptic movies where it's like, oh wait, AI is bettering itself. It's teaching itself how to be
yeah.
faster and smarter and more creative. I'm like, I I don't know if it should be doing that, but it is, and it's like, well, what are we gonna do? Yell at traffic again? It's like, okay, how do we,
Yeah.
how do we take advantage of that? Because as a creative, you can take advantage of that.
Of
So,
course.
and that's what I'm saying is like my nervousness is not about like I think that for creatives, it is awesome, and it's something that should be leaned into because it can make you better at it. Saying that doesn't mean I let go of like I was part of a VistaVision crew, a camera crew that was shooting VistaVision. It's coming back, and I'm like, I love that. I'm happy it's coming back. I'm happy that film was that like a lot of movies shot in the last few years were shot on film. I love all of this, and it's just a testament that the old technology doesn't mean that that's no good. Old technology is valid technology. It didn't get
Yeah.
invalidated by the new technology. It's just new tools have come about. And I think people become so hyper revolutionary and they think it's a whole revolution, and it's not. It's just a new tool, and embrace this new tool and add it to your toolbox. Don't
Yeah.
get rid of your hammer because you got this really cool screwdriver. You still need both. They both have a use. And I think that's how I look at everything. Like my whole career has been about going from practical model building to computer generated model building to now AI generated model building. It's just like what's another way of model. It's like it's just that's the whole thing, and it's not just for filmmaking; it's for media in general. It's
Yeah.
like that's that the behind the worlds, like world building. Your podcast, yeah, world building is not world building. It starts here, and then how do you get it out to here? And that shareability is what makes it human. Building
I love
world,
it.
people do it with text. Some people do it with painting. Some people do it with sketching.
Some people with music.
Some people with music. Whole
Yeah.
world build music. Some people do it
Yeah.
with food. They build worlds through food. And it's
Yeah.
like to me, it's like all the above, please. Like, it's like that's the world I want to smell, feel, taste. Like if a good painting can give you some of those senses, even though you're not, it's like pushing you towards in that direction. Like sometimes I'm watching a good show and it makes me hungry because I'm just watching. It's like, look at that meal they're having. Like this show, obviously, whoever is doing it is like focused on the food being served. I'm like, oh, that's
uh,
just awesome.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
when music, I now recognize how much music like manipulates my feelings. But doggone it, when it's done really well, they got me. I am a slave to where they're trying to take me. I was like, this is awesome.
I love it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this leads me. I think you've touched on, and which leads me to my last question. 25-year-old Ken has access to all these tools. Is sitting in front of you. A lot of people that I know or like have seen dream of having a career in the space where you work in, like working in Hollywood, doing all these crazy stuff. And now these tools are here. You've talked about it. You've said, "I wish I had these tools when I was 25," or like
Right?
when you
Yeah.
were younger.
Yeah.
Young Ken is sitting in front of you with all the tools. you want him to have as much success and as much happiness in this career path, what advice would you give him?
I would not have changed anything I've done, and I would just tell him
Yes.
to follow fun, because I do think if you wanna be a filmmaker in general, which means, like, then you're focusing on character and story and these type of things, you need to
Yeah.
focus on what makes a good storyteller, what makes a good storyteller, how do they interact with the different departments? That's a whole different thing than being, like, a good, cinematographer, a good production designer. So it's like,
Yeah.
I always loved art. I do love filmmaking. I thought I wanted to be a director, and I have directed, and I still love directing, but I realized, oh, I have not focused, and I really don't have the background and the foundation of that. And I will that's why I'll try it, but 25-year-old me, or anybody getting into the industry, it's the barriers have all disappeared. Like, they're all gone. And before, to work on an animation, it was Play-Doh. There was no
Yeah.
CG. There was no CG animation. It was Play-Doh. So I did all these things with my friends. For anybody who wanted to animate with me, Play-Doh. We were just taking, and we didn't have stop motion cameras because
Yeah.
they existed, but we just had like picture cameras, and it was so hard, but we would do it anyways. And that's what we did. And eventually, I got into animation, or it became a thing where it's like, I did things where I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested in that anymore.
Yeah.
But it helped me. At least I got into it and I learned, okay, that's not what I want to do anymore. There's with zero barrier, there's nothing holding me back from specializing, because that's the thing you're going to get hired for. You'll get hired as a generalist, but if you specialize, and I think you'll hear it. We hire generalists. We don't hire specialists. And that's true in the sense of, right now it's easy to be a generalist, but you're not going to be really good at anything. And I think you should try and be good at something. And some people pick what's most lucrative. Oh, directors get all the fame and this and that, or actor, and that's great if that's what your dream is. I've always wanted to to build worlds and build characters. Story has been something I've been struggling with. I would love to be a master storyteller, and I still strive to be. But right now, I love building characters, and I build storylines behind the character. I build storylines like, why would this building look this way? Well, because the people who built it have gone through
Yeah.
this, this and this and this and that. So I build stories for myself to do those crafts. But to build a real story where someone's going to pay good money to go watch, no one's there yet. For some, like, I've directed, I've written, but they're more for like based off of not film and TV. It's the location based entertainment stuff, whereas like
Yeah.
to get people, like, I've built characters and to take them through this ride, but it's based on somebody else's IP.
Yeah.
So I did one for Alien Terraforma. So it's somebody else, that's Fox's Alien World, right? So it's like, in directing that whole thing, coming up with the characters and all these things was great. But I didn't come up with the Alien franchise. That's one of my favorite franchises in the whole wide world. I was like, I could never write something even, one millionth that good, or Predator. The next thing I was going to do after that
Yeah.
was Alien versus Predator. And Predator, I was like, oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite. Like, I watch that every year. And it's just something about it that's just, it
Yeah.
grabs me. And I always wish I can do that. But I create characters like Predator. I create environments like Predator. I strive to build stories like so. These are the things, like, as a young person, just start doing it all. There's no barriers. Just do it all. And your phone is the most powerful thing right now. That with I've been doing Beeble tests lately. I don't mean to drop names here, but holy cow, it's like, just with your iPhone, the things that you can do, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, and now with like all the AI tools that are available on your phone, it's
Ooh.
just like the
Yeah.
amount of the amount of brain power you have in your pocket is
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. You're the limit of production.
I love it. Ken, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been really a pleasure to have you here and like listen to all the great stories and the behind the scenes and literally the behind the worlds. You are the perfect kind of guest for these kind of like for my podcast where I want to like give access to people what it's like to work on these things behind behind the scenes of like those worlds, which is why I called it behind the worlds. So thank you for sharing. Thank you
Oh,
for your time.
yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.